Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Travis Sepala, and the name of the podcast is I Might Be Wrong. Thank you all for joining me. Before I get started, I just want to remind everybody to take a little bit of time to subscribe, follow, leave a comment, leave a review, 5-star rating. All of those things help me to grow this show, and the best part about it is it really takes almost no effort and time on your part, and it's deeply appreciated for me, and it does make a difference. So thank you in advance for doing that. For all of you people who already have done those things, I'm assuming the reason you would do that is because you like the show. If you like it, please share it with other people. I'm trying to continue to grow the channel, and the only way it can grow is just by word of mouth in many cases. The algorithm helps, but sharing it with other like-minded people is a great way. Also, if you're listening to it on Apple or Spotify or whatever else, I just want to remind everybody that I actually do have it on YouTube in video form. A lot of people aren't aware of that. I'm trying to grow that channel. My first personal goal is 500 subscribers, so please help me get there by just jumping over there and hit that subscribe button. Thank you very much for all of those things in advance. If you'd like to support the show, you will find links in the description, along with a link to the show's email. So thank you for all of those things, and let's get started. About 10 years ago, I was walking through a store with my wife, and we were going through the appliance section of the store, and I noticed at the time something that was really unusual to me. I noticed all of these Samsung refrigerators. And while Samsung is very ubiquitous all over the place today, that wasn't the case, if you go back 10, 15 years ago. They weren't everywhere. They weren't in all of the stores. In fact, they were just getting into the United States market. And so that alone was something that was just unusual. But more unusual to me at the time was I thought to myself, man, this is odd. You have a company that's known for the cell phone, it's known for the smartphone, it's known for some really great flat screen TVs, and now all of a sudden they're going to start making refrigerators. And I was curious as to why at the time. And so I decided I was going to dig into it because I thought surely this has something to do with their mobile devices and connecting appliances and all of these other things together so that you can have a smartphone. And in order to do that, they had to start making their refrigerators. And I was curious, I wonder how good their refrigerators even are, because they're just starting out. And so I decided to go do some research, and much to my shock, I found out that Samsung had been making refrigerators and other home appliances since before I was born. In fact, they started out in the 1930s or so as a grocery company and evolved over time. And in the 1970s got heavily involved into home electronics with black and white TVs and all sorts of other home appliances. So here you had this brand now in the 2010s, somewhere in there, like I said, 10, 15 years ago, that had so transformed its identity over time that I no longer saw it as anything else other than smartphones and televisions and small computing. And here I'm thinking to myself, now they're going to start making home appliances, when the reality is that they were a company that had always been making home appliances, at least since before I was born. And now they had moved into these other things, and they had so transformed their identity over time that when I saw one of their appliances, I just assumed, well, this is a new thing. Because I understood that this is what this company is. It's the phone in my hand. It's the television on the wall. It's the laptop that I see somebody walking around with. It's all of these sorts of different things. But it's not an appliance company. And I find that fascinating, because that means at no point in time, regardless of how their circumstances changed, regardless of how environments changed, Samsung was never tied to a single identity. They always had the ability to evolve and change their identity over time in order to just keep moving forward. And it made me think, and it still to this day makes me think, that if a company as big and behemoth as Samsung can do this, then no human being, none of us are tied to any set of our circumstances. We're not simply governed by our environment. We always have the ability to move forward. And our story's never over. is probably the important thing that I realize, because I think we get into these positions in life, we get into these places in life where it almost seems like everything's stuck and there is no moving forward, and this is who I am and this is where I'm going to be for the rest of my life. And the more I thought about that, and even now think about it, it always reminds me, interestingly enough, Samsung reminds me of the story of Joseph, because this is somebody whose life takes a number of twists and turns. And yet, at no point in time does he give up. At no point in time is his story over. You start from his youth when he's favored by his father. And as a result of being favored by his father, he's already growing up in an environment where he is envied by his brothers. And not only that, he's receiving gifts from his father. He's receiving, favorable treatment from his father. It's quite obvious that he's the favorite of his father, and as a result, he's by far the most unpopular amongst all of the brothers. Now, to make matters worse, it's very obvious that an anointing has been placed on him, and so he receives these visions, and in these visions, what's being communicated to him through his dreams and visions is that at some point in time, he's actually going to stand in a place of authority over the entirety of his family, and they're going to bow down to him. And he thinks it's a great idea to share this with his brothers and to share this with his entire family, who's already envious of him. And this shows his youth to a certain degree, because you would probably think the only reason somebody would do this is because they're excited, they want to share this. It doesn't say that there's any malintent. It's not like he's thumbing his nose at them or something, saying, well, you guys are jealous of me. I just want you to know that at some point in time you're going to be bowing down to me. That doesn't seem to be the intent at all. You don't find that within the scripture. Instead, there is just this desire to share it with him. Share it with his brothers. And the response is pretty obvious. They're already jealous of him. They already can't really stand him because of the favorable treatment. And now this is kind of just the straw that's on top, that's breaking the camel's back. And so in the midst of this jealousy, they decide that they're going to lash out at him. They're going to take him out. And initially what they wanted to do was to kill him, for anybody who's not familiar with the story. And you have one of the brothers that's saying, well, you know what, we don't want to kill him. That would be terrible. We would have his blood on our hands. Instead, let's do something different. We're going to sell him off into slavery. And so there's these slavers that are coming through, and they sell their brother off into slavery, which for all intents and purposes should be the same thing as killing him. Because it's not like, going into the hands of slavers is a good thing. Now, all of a sudden, you've just become property, and that's all you are. Who knows where you're going to end up? And once you end up there, what's going to happen with you? You basically have now become somebody's possession. And one of the things that's really remarkable is now Joseph goes from this place where he has pretty much anything he could possibly want. He has a father who loves him. His brothers are jealous of him, but he has his father's protection, and he's favored by his father. He's got a really easy life. He has this vision, this anointing, this calling that's been placed on his life. And it seems like everything should be wonderful. And instead, what happens? He ends up in slavery. And what we're told he ends up within the household of Potiphar, who is a very powerful military person. And he's serving within this household. And it says the favor of the Lord was still on him there. And what happens is he gets there and he performs. He performs. He becomes recognized as the best of his servants. He gets elevated to essentially the head of his household, the steward, the house manager, the person who's running Potiphar's household. This is not what happens when somebody gets into a bad situation or a bad circumstance and says to themselves, woe is me. There's no hope. This is the end. There's nothing else that I can do. Instead, this is somebody that obviously had to have done well. It's one thing for the Bible to simply say that he was favored by the Lord, but it was being done in such a way that everything that he was doing was prospering within the house. But at no point in time did he ever stop doing, did he ever stop moving. At no point in time did he ever say to himself, well, I'm stuck or there's no hope for me. My story is over. I can't believe that here I had all of these wonderful things going on for me, and now here I am. My goodness, this is it. What else is there to do? No, instead of doing this, what you have is you have him working up to a position of leadership, to a position of authority. You have him continuing to perform within his life and refusing to give up. He's not constrained by his circumstances. He's definitely not defined by his circumstances. The environment around him doesn't change who he is. It doesn't put him into this place where he's going to despair or something like that. Instead, he just keeps moving forward, trusting in the fact that God is going to be faithful to him, trusting in the favor of the Lord, walking, you might say, by faith, even though nothing around him at the time initially could have been good. You have just been sold into another person's house as property. What are you going to do? Well, what Joseph did is he continued to move. And so now he ends up in a situation where once again he is elevated. He has a most favored status. And in that most favored status, all of a sudden now he's being accused of a crime that he doesn't commit. Because you have Potiphar's wife looking on the handsome Joseph, and it literally says in the Bible that he was really handsome, and she just wanted him. And he runs away from her. He wants nothing to do with her advances. And she becomes angry. And so she accuses him of assaulting her. And Potiphar obviously doesn't seem really happy about it. But what else is he going to do? A crime has been committed, or he's been accused of a crime. And all he is a Hebrew slave. He's property. So even if he is performing, even if he is doing a wonderful job, it doesn't really matter. You can always get someone else to replace this. And so Joseph is sent off into prison. So now you might say he's even in a worse circumstance, than where he was initially, because now he's inside of a prison, accused of a crime that he didn't commit, after he had been elevated to another high favored status. And so what are you going to do now? What are you going to do now, Joseph? Now that everything's fallen apart, you got to a place where you should have been, absolutely killing it for the rest of your life. Your story should have possibly ended there, and now here it is. You're back down, even lower than where you began. Lower than you've ever been before, I would say. And is your life over? Obviously, at this point in time, it would be really easy for a person to just give in to their circumstances, to give into their environment, and to simply say, well, there is no hope. There is no point in moving forward because, not only has something bad happened to me, but I got placed into a situation where I killed it. I was doing well, and I was elevated to a high status, and the only thing all of that work got me is boom, right back down here in the middle of just an absolute hell on earth. And instead of doing that, once again, the same theme repeats itself. He's favored, and he's elevated even in the prison to a place where he is above and watches over the guards. The prison guards elevate him to this. Now, I realize it says that he's favored by the Lord, but it doesn't just necessarily mean, God was forcing people to do these things. You can't put somebody into a place of authority in a situation like that if they're not performing. If all Joseph was doing was hanging his head and saying to himself, my life is over, crawls into a corner and decides, there's really no reason to continue on, there's no way you could even elevate him to a place where he has any authority, because he wouldn't even have the ability to exercise any sort of authority or leadership at this point in time. So it shows that in that circumstance, as bad as it got, he didn't give up. He didn't stop thinking to himself. He didn't start thinking to himself, there's no point going on. And I think that's just a powerful thing to recognize, because we end up in circumstances all of the time where the environment and the circumstances themselves are overwhelming. And one of the easiest things to do is just to give in to despair and assume that there's no point in going on. This is really the story of Joseph in many ways. Surely, yes, it's a story of an anointing that's been placed on him. It's a calling that's placed on him. But it's not like because there was a calling that was placed on him that it led to a prosperous life. It's not that because God had given him these visions that all sorts of great things happened to him. In fact, terrible things happened to him. Terrible things that happen. And I mean, you have to understand the worst types of things. When your brothers do something like this, it's not just something mean that they've done. This is your family, and they've betrayed you. And betrayal is something that is so hard to get over as a human being. Betrayal has the ability to drop us into a place that's really, really dangerous and ugly. And he doesn't give in to this betrayal, which is so important, because to give in to these things gives us no ability to move forward, no ability to find any sort of a transformation, any ability to even grow from it. And even in the midst of, and after this happens, once again, it's another form of betrayal. It's not his own family at this point in time, but a lie is being told about him. His reputation is destroyed. So he's been betrayed by his family. His reputation is destroyed. What could he possibly have to go on? And yet he continues to go on. He's ministering to the different people within the prison. He's interpreting dreams that they have. And he's gaining this wonderful reputation in the prison. And so, one might think, well, what good is a reputation in a prison? Who really cares what people in prison, who cares what people think of you when you're in prison? And that's a really important thing to think about. Because a lot of times when we get dropped into like really difficult situations, or when we drop into like a valley in our life, to use that term, the last thing I think people think about is, well, it's really important in this that I still maintain and keep a good reputation with the people around me. Even if everybody else around me thinks I'm a terrible person, I'm going to maintain a good reputation. But that's exactly what he does. He works with these people to the point you actually have, the person who has connection to Pharaoh, when he's going to be let out of prison, telling Joseph, I'm going to remember you and I'm going to talk to Pharaoh. And what happens? He doesn't do it. And so he languishes in this prison for even longer. The promise that was given to me is, hey, I'm going to talk to Pharaoh when I get a chance to do this. And so you just wait. And so he waits, and it would have became quite obvious that either he didn't say anything to Pharaoh, he didn't put a good word in for me, or maybe he did and it doesn't really matter. So does he languish? Does he give up? No, absolutely not. He continues to live his life under the worst of circumstances. And eventually, he's now called to answer the Pharaoh's dreams. Because now the Pharaoh's starting to have dreams. And all of a sudden, oh yeah, the guy remembers to himself, well, when I was in prison, there was this guy who had the ability to interpret dreams. And he goes and shares this information with Pharaoh. And now all of a sudden, Joseph has an audience with the most powerful person in this civilization. And he's given the ability to interpret the dream. But he doesn't stop there, interestingly enough. He doesn't just simply say, hey, Pharaoh, this is what's going to happen. This is what the dream means. He also, in the midst of this, offers up advice to Pharaoh. These are what the dreams mean, and it's going to most likely happen quite soon because you received 2 of these dreams close to each other, and this is what I think you need to do. I'm going to give you advice. Imagine that. A prisoner, a slave who's become a prisoner, offering up advice to the most powerful person in all of the land. This shows the fact that at no point in time does he think to himself, oh yeah, I'm just a worm. I'm worthless. My story's over. He feels the ability in a moment like that, not only to give an interpretation, but to share the advice. And the Pharaoh is impressed by this. And as a result, Joseph ends up being placed second in command over all of Israel. And it really is a remarkable story because at no point in time does he get bogged down by so many of the different things that could bog a person down when they're in those types of circumstances. He doesn't at any point in time just assume his story's over, and that's really important. I think one of the other things is he's never really consumed by vengeance or revenge or bitterness. And this is seen quite clearly in the way the story kind of wraps up, this arc of that story. Because nearing the end of, the whole story of Joseph, what happens is everything comes back full circle, and now he has his brothers in front of him. And now they're actually bowing to him because he is second in command in Israel. And they're searching for food. They're there for food. And here he now has them. And what's amazing is they're right in front of him, and he's been so transformed by his circumstances that they don't even realize who he is anymore. Because he didn't be, and it's not like transformed in a bad way. You know, he hasn't so run down that he's some bum on a street with his hair all matted and he's just ugly and whatever else is going on, that they walked by him on the street and they couldn't even recognize him. It's the fact that he had grown and he had continued on with his life, so much so that when they finally are in front of him, they don't even realize that they're standing in front of their brother. And what's really amazing is here they are in a situation where they're bowing down to him. And this is why I say it's very obvious he was never living his life out in bitterness or with vengeance. I mean, he plays some little games with them to a certain degree, but it's pretty obvious that the reason he's doing this is he wants to do something to manipulate them to get their father to come to. But he doesn't try to get back at them. He doesn't try to harm them. Even once he's revealed his identity, the first thing that their brothers think to themselves is, oh my goodness, like we did this and now he's in a position to destroy us if he wants. Not just one of us, every single one of us. I mean, not just one of us, but all of us. He's in a power to where anything that he wants to do will be done to us. And they're fearful for their life. And Joseph at this point in time says something really remarkable. He says to them, the things that you did, that you intended for evil, God used these things for good. Joseph wasn't consumed by bitterness. He wasn't consumed by a need to get vengeance. He didn't live his life out thinking to himself, this is who I am. I'm the boy whose brother sold him into slavery. I'm this person that had this life at one point in time, and this is where I am now. And this is one of the things that I think is so important to understand, because this is really what victimhood looks like. The opposite, I should say, like victimhood does not look like Joseph. The opposite of what Joseph is doing is to live in a place of victimhood, where we're looking back at the circumstances that had happened to us, and we're defining ourselves by those circumstances. This is what's happened to me. This is what was been done to me. And so I can't move forward because all I can ever see is the bad thing that's happened in the past. And now I'm in this circumstance, and the reason I'm in this circumstance is because this thing happened back here. And then as I move on with my life, I can't continue to move on because this bad thing led to more bad things, and it's just dropped me farther and farther and farther back. And now all I can think about is the fact that none of this would be going on. I wouldn't be in slavery. I wouldn't be sitting in a prison if it wasn't for what my brothers did to me. Joseph doesn't embrace that. He doesn't embrace that type of a mentality where he sees himself as a victim. He doesn't embrace a mentality where he's thinking to himself, if I ever get a chance to get back at them, boy, are they going to pay. I will make them regret the fact that they ever did this. He doesn't embrace anything like this. He continues to thrive and move in his life regardless of how difficult the circumstances are. Because he's not looking backwards. And he's not looking backwards in a way to fantasize over what I could possibly do if I ever get a chance to do something to him. He's living in the present moment, and he's embracing it and thriving and doing the absolute best that he can do at any given point in time in his life. You see, he does the exact same thing with Potiphar and his wife. Because, Potiphar was a powerful military official. His wife, she was the wife of a powerful military official. I wonder what they thought to themselves. I realize this is just, conjecture, but I wonder what they thought when they found out that Joseph is now second in command. I wonder what Potiphar's wife thought to herself when she realized that he was second in command. You don't think if he's second in command of all of Egypt, does that mean that he's ruled by Potiphar any longer? No. Truth of the matter is he has the ability to do whatever he wants to do to them too. If he wants to extract an ounce of flesh, he can do it. If he wants them in prison, it can happen. We don't read that ever happens. He's not looking backwards, thinking to himself that that's who I am. I'm the person who was falsely accused. I'm the person who had this thing happen to me in my past. He's not allowing his past circumstances to define who he is at any given moment. He's not allowing his present circumstances at any given moment to define him. He's not living in a place where he's fantasizing about vengeance. He's not living in a place where he's assumed that his story is over. He's embracing every single moment of his life. And it's a call to us to do the exact same thing. And it's not an easy thing to do, because it requires the ability to walk by faith and to trust in the fact that no matter what's going on in my life, if the Lord has brought me to this moment, he will finish the good work that he started in me. And no matter how difficult or dire my circumstances get, I have to trust and believe that the Lord is present in them. And that's one of the things that's being communicated to us in the Bible. I think one of my favorite examples of this is actually found in the book of Job, because, it's very well known, that at the very beginning of his story, everything's taken from Job. And he says, that no matter what, I came into this with nothing. I'm going to leave with nothing. No matter how difficult these things are, blessed be the name of the Lord. I will still bless the name of the Lord. Well, that's how it starts. By the end, he's literally cursing the very day he is born, and he's essentially shaking his fist at God, saying, why did you do this to me? And the answer from God is a really remarkable answer, because he asks Job this long series of questions that it's tied to the universe. It's tied to the very earth and creation itself, down to little intimate details like, do you know, starts with things like are you aware of where the storehouses of hail are? Do you know where the foundations of the universe are set and all of this? But down to the most unique, minute details in all of the creation, where he's saying, do you know when an animal gives birth to her foal? Are you aware of when that kind of things when those kinds of things happen? And obviously Job isn't. But what's so important to me, what I find so remarkable about that, is it means that God is. He knows everything that's going on in our life. And that's one of the things that Jesus is sharing within the Gospels, where he's talking about, hey, flowers of the field, birds of the air, they flourish. Why do they flourish? Because God takes care of them. Why does God take care of them? Because he knows. He knows. And if he's aware of this, he's aware of me, and he's aware of you. He's aware of what's going on in your life, and your story isn't over as a direct result of this, because you're not necessarily the author of your story. He is. The only thing that we have the ability to do is act in a way that honors him throughout the entirety of the story, because he is aware of it, and we walk by faith. It's a really amazing privilege, because this is the only time in our lives, this was shared with me recently, this is the only time in our existence where we actually have the ability, we've been given the gift to walk by faith. Because prior to arriving here on this earth, we just, we weren't existing. After this life is over, faith is going to become sight. While we're here on this earth right now, we walk by faith. There is a sense of uncertainty. There is a realization that every moment in our life we have to trust in the Lord and trust in the fact that he's going to take care of us. It is not an easy thing. It's not the type of thing I would say that you can fake it until you make it. It doesn't work. I think a great example of this isn't necessarily it's actually found in the Psalms. I find this when I read through the Psalms of David. They're really, really remarkable because, everybody has heard the statement that David was a man after God's own heart, and he walked by faith, obviously. And God was there in his life, showing favor on him. He was anointed, not necessarily for the same purpose that Joseph was anointed, but surely David was anointed. Surely God walked with David and he was present with David. And so what do we read when we read of David and we read of his feelings? Well, we see him saying things like, and this is just paraphrasing, but you go through the Psalms and this is what the Psalms end up looking like. You have him saying to himself, oh my goodness, no matter what's going on in my life, God is going to take care of it. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I won't fear any evil. And then shortly thereafter, he's saying, in another psalm, Lord, I'm surrounded by enemies, and where are you? I'm in the depths of despair. There's no hope for me. He says, I will hunger after righteousness, and the righteousness of the Lord is something that I deeply, deeply desire, and this is who I am, and it's good to chase after these types of things. And then you find another psalm where he's saying to himself, Lord, don't remove your favor from me. Restore unto me the joy of thy salvation. Even saying something like that shows these shifts within his faith, within his walk. Because if he's saying to God, restore to me the joy of thy salvation, it means at one point in time there's joy, and now there isn't joy. We find him needing to repent. We find him needing to cry out to God. We find him in places where he's essentially saying, where are you, God? And at the same time praising him for being everywhere all at once and watching over him, and surely nothing bad could possibly happen to him because God is on my side. So this isn't the type of thing where I'm saying, yeah, so just put on a happy face and pretend like everything's good. Fake it until you make it. No, that doesn't work. That's not what walking by faith is. It isn't. It's not faking it until you make it. It's being in places where there will be despair, where we will have enemies around us, where things are going to be dire and it's going to seem hopeless. But it's remembering, even in the midst of all of those things, that God is aware of my circumstances. And God is aware of what's going on. And no matter how difficult my life is, no matter what's happened to me in the past, no matter what happened to me in the future, and no matter what's going on right now in this moment, He knows. He knows. And He's aware of it. And your story isn't over, regardless of what their circumstances are. So don't look backwards and assume to yourself that because something terrible happened to you in your past, that your story's over, because that's who I am. I'm the person that had bad things happen to me. I'm the person who had people betray me. I'm the person who had people destroy my reputation. Joseph could have easily done something like this. I'm the person who had everything stolen from me. I'm the person who, name the list, who was assaulted, who was abused. None of those things are easy. None of those things are great, but that's not who you are. And the moment we identify ourselves as that, our story is over. Because there's nothing else. I'm now tied to a singular event in my life, and this has become my identity. When the reality is my identity, your identity is found in the fact that regardless of whatever your circumstances are, you are a child of God. You bear the image of God in this life. And everywhere you go through this life, God is aware of you. Because if He's aware of everything else that's going on in this life, He knows what's going on for you. And whatever gifts, talents, abilities He's placed inside of you, He desires for you to use them, and He will continue to create and bless the path in front of you. Now, it might not seem like that's possible. And that's where, once again, we get back to walking by faith, continuing to move forward. And what's amazing is that when we do that, we end up changing, transforming, growing. We end up becoming people that we wouldn't even have the ability to recognize if we would have met, like our past self. And the people who've done harm to you, they won't recognize you either. Because you're not going to be tied to an incident. You're not going to be tied to a moment in time. The Bible in the New Testament instructs us as Christians to grow in the grace and knowledge of Jesus Christ. Growth is movement. It's always moving forward, never being defined by our current set of circumstances or what our past circumstances are. It's growing and understanding that whatever is going on in my life, my story isn't over. It's not. So don't give in to that despair. Don't ever assume that your story is over, because the moment you do that, the sad truth is, it is. You could go on living another 80 years, but because you decided at this point in time in your life your story is over, it is, because you don't change. You'll become tied to those events, you'll become tied to that person, and you'll never grow beyond any of that. Your story's not over. And your circumstances certainly don't define what your story is. Your story's over when you see him face to face and he's saying, "Well done, good and faithful servant." In the meantime, we're just in the middle of it. And we're given this amazing gift, because it really is a gift, because we're only going to be able to do this once. And that is walking by faith, trusting in the fact that no matter what's going on, God knows. He knows. Thanks, everybody, and goodbye. Hey, for those of you who have made it to the end, I really appreciate you getting here. I just want to ask everybody, if you want to just take a little bit of time to kind of support the channel. I'm trying to grow, especially on the YouTube side. I'm trying to grow this to at least 500 subscribers, but trying to get to 1,000, obviously. And also, right now, there are a number of different ways that you can support the channel, and honestly, for a very small amount of support. And anything that you do to help me out there gives me the ability to dedicate more and more time to producing this content. And I love doing this. I truly enjoy doing this, and I want to be able to push more time into it. So anything that you decide to give, I mean, it can be a monthly gift, it can be a one-time gift, it can be like $1, because those types of options are available, especially on the one-time gifts. So just take the time to look into the Buy Me a Coffee, especially. I'm trying to get more support there. Anybody who has supported me up to this point in time, I thank you so much. Everything you're doing means the world to me. Thank you. Thank you, and goodbye.